Welcome back, everybody, to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. The home stretch here for the show last couple of weeks. I want to say thanks to everybody out there for your kind messages about the show coming to an end. Of course, Mo will be around. I'll be around. There'll be all sorts of good things going on, but we certainly appreciate your support as we wind down the show here. But listen up, we got a lot of news today, and don't forget to follow Mo on Twitter, Moemoton. I am at LB Gully, the show SNB today. And boy, what an eventful week so far. Tuesday, yesterday, of course, Klint Kubiak named the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Finally, official press conference. A lot of Hall of Famers, Raider greats at the event. Who wasn't at the event? We'll talk about that. This first segment, we'll get into a little bit about what Kubiak said, our impressions of that. Second segment, we'll talk about the Maxx Crosby situation and some odds and ends from Raider Nation. Scott Gulbransen back with Moe Moton, Moe's senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. All right, Mo, we're going to get to some of the sound here in just a minute, but it's nice for not only Raider Nation out there, but for the players on the team, for the organization, now to have its leadership set. You have John Spytek year 2. You now have Klint Kubiak, the guy they wanted. This wasn't 2025 when they really would love, like Ben Johnson, who gave them a cursory interview, was never really serious about the Raider job. They go get the guy they want. I think they get the guy most Raider Nation wanted, but talk about them finally being able to deliver on what is considered, I believe, one of the top, if not the top, young candidate for an open coaching position in the NFL this season.
I've been joking with Murph all week. He can now breathe. Raider Nation can now breathe. They got their head coach that they've been wanting. Murph a little on the pessimistic side. Raider Nation a little worried after what Cliff Kingsbury did a couple of years ago when he backed out of the OC position under Antonio Pierce. But Klint Kubiak said it after the Super Bowl win that he was coming to Las Vegas, and heck yeah, I'm coming to Las Vegas, and he was excited about it. While he is how should I say this, a very reserved type person, you could see that he is excited about the job and the position that he's in right now. Of course, he's going to have access to the top quarterback prospect in the upcoming class. He mentioned the cap space that he's going to have, so he's going to be able to build out his vision of what he wants for the football team. He got a 5-year deal. If you remember, John Spytek got a 5-year deal when he was hired as the Raiders general manager. So there's alignment there, both long-term deals, not a short-term deal for the coach and a long-term deal for the general manager. That matters. We'll talk more about that. But I thought Klint Kubiak was exactly what I expected him to be. He's not the rah-rah guy. He's not going to give you a bunch of quotables. He's not going to yell Raiders at the podium. That's not a shot at anybody. But he's not going to do all the stuff that's going to make you feel good about, oh, he's an old school Raider. No, he's going to be himself. And I think he talked about that during the presser about how Mike McDonald, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, was himself. He didn't try to be John Harbaugh when he came from Baltimore to Seattle. He was himself, and that's what worked with that football team. I think that's what Klint Kubiak's going to do when he's in Las Vegas.
Right. And I think it's the most excited I've seen Raider Nation since John Gruden, the beginning, of course, the end was not good, of the John Gruden 2.0 era, right, where there's this level of excitement. But if I look at the situation, and you mentioned a couple of the parameters there that Klint Kubiak talked about, Mo, which was the idea that not only do you have leadership in locked in long-term deals, you also have that quarterback coming in the draft. That's something the Raiders haven't had. Really, I mean, you go back to the Derek Carr, and by the way, Derek Carr is not coming back. The Derek Carr draft and him coming in 2014. This is really the first time, I believe, and I know there's a lot of Raider Nation out there still, and you talked about Murph finally kind of getting over that hump. I think some people still aren't over the hump. The messages I've gotten have been, hey, got to do it on the field. And absolutely, press conferences don't win anything, right? We've seen too many of these over the years as we've covered this team. So I understand that. But if you look at how things are lining up, if you look at those, the money situation, the revenue situation, the coaching situation, the draft, it all just seems to line up to give. Again, you got to get it done, but it gives him the opportunity to succeed in a way I don't know that any Raider coach has had in a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not gonna give the whole speech about there are adults in the room again. We're not gonna do that again. But I will say that there are some optics that stood out to me. So, and this is credit to the Raider fans out there because they spotted this too. Notice where Mark Davis was sitting during that press conference. He wasn't leading the press conference. He didn't open the press conference on the mic. It was John Spytek on the mic. Of course, Will Kiss introduced people, but it was John Spytek on the mic, and Mark Davis was in the background, not at the forefront. So, and if you want to look into symbolics or symbolism, John Spytek's show, he is now running the show. And I think that's important for the Raiders going forward because now you have a GM that's going to set his vision, and you would hope that Klint Kubiak and John Spytek are aligned in that vision, whatever it is.
Right. And you said, now sometimes things are done just for optics, right? But in this case, I think it's indicative and it's consistent with what we heard after they moved on from Pete Carroll, which was John Spytek, Tom Brady leading the football side, right? That's it. That's how it's going to work. And that's what we saw. Now, Tom Brady wasn't there, and that's fine because he's there, but he's not day to day there. So Spytek and Kubiak being there surrounded by Raider greats, I thought was a great opportunity. Now, I want to get some of the video and sound from the press conference here. I just pulled a couple things. The beginning of his statement when he started after being introduced, then a little bit about his staff, because a lot of you had said to me, hey, if I could ask a question, it would be about his staff. Now, again, at an introductory press conference, you're not going to get a whole lot of detail. They asked about Fernando Mendoza twice. He did not address Fernando Mendoza specifically. Even though everybody in the world thinks and knows the Raiders are going to take Mendoza number one, you still don't want to show your cards, right? This is a game. This is a business. So he wasn't going to get into specific draft prospects. Plus, he's focused on just getting his staff together, I would imagine, first. So that he didn't talk about that. But let's play this clip. It's about 2 minutes of some highlights from the introductory press conference. Here's Klint Kubiak, head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Really excited to be here. Just want to first off and just want to thank God for the opportunity to sit in front of you guys today. You know, God had a plan for this day that I could never have seen, and I'm just grateful. I want to thank the ownership group. I want to thank Mark. Okay, I want to thank Tom, Egon, Michael. I'm just so grateful for you guys giving me a chance to get to know me better and to give me a chance to come be a part of leading this franchise. I think over 2 separate interviews, I just got very comfortable with John and Mr. Davis and the ownership structure. And it's really they didn't have to say much. This is the Raiders. This is one of the most historic franchises in the NFL with a great history that I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of furthering that history. I think the Raiders really sold itself, but having those 2 different interviews and getting more comfortable with the men in the room went a long way. Yeah, I'm in the weeds of it right now, man. So, we're identifying candidates and going to be contacting guys and bringing them in. But I think whoever that coach is, it'll be really important that we establish a style of play, a physical style of play. And that's offense and defense. So I'm just way more worried about how our guys play than opposed to the X's and O's of it all. That's part of our job as coaches is to scheme guys and help them be put in the best positions. But I want to make sure that we have a DC that is that's coaching effort first and technique, and a guy that's going to rip into somebody if they're not finishing in practice, because that's what helps you win. In February, it's not the X's and O's. They got 17 games of tape on you. It's about how hard you.
All right, there you go, Mo. Some tidbits from Klint Kubiak. We'll dive into that a little bit. He started off, and I think I don't know why. If you're not a religious person, that's fine. That's what's great about this country. You can do whatever you want. But I know some people really get allergic to that, and he led with his faith, and I think that's something Raider fans are going to have to get used to. Used to hear that with Derek Carr a lot. You're going to hear it with him. You're going to hear it with Fernando Mendoza. But he started off with that. But then getting to the staff perspective, too. I mean, he talked about ownership and his comfort level there. But I thought the staff information, the style of play, we got a little glimpse there. We know from where he's been and what he's done. And this is something I want to get your comment on this, because over the last couple of years, you and I have spent a lot of time on this show, and you've spent a lot of time writing about the fact that the staffs were not, last year, Pete Carroll's staff was a disaster. Then we had the situation with Antonio Pierce, and that that staff, which wasn't really deep and had issues and had to move on from Luke Getsy, all the just the turnover and the lack of coaching that we've seen that's come across on the field. I think with this, he set the tone here, and he talked more at length too about teachers, people that are going to come in, teach the technique, but that the players are going to have to go out and physically get it done. But I thought that was refreshing. Again, not a lot of detail, but you can bet that they are going to go out and get a staff he feels is going to get the Raiders to the next step.
I think you mentioned the word silent tape. I would say the identity of the football team. How do you identify a player that fits in what they're doing? And that goes beyond, as he said, the X's and O's, because that's their job to teach these guys the X's and O's and where do you have to be in a certain play? Where is this play going? We saw too many times last year where players were going the wrong way on any given play on offense, and you knew there was some confusion there. But they're going to be identifying Raiders based on what I would guess a physical style of play, which a lot of coaches say they want to be physical. But if you look at where Kubiak came from in Seattle, they were physical and aggressive. And he talked about the Raider history and the Raiders, how they played back when Howie Long was on the field, physical and aggressive. So I think he wants to have that team go in that direction where they have that physical and an aggressiveness, but they also have how should I say, a sophistication of what the modern day league is today, where they're not out there committing boneheaded penalties. They're smart about it, but they're gonna you're gonna feel it the next day, as you said. John Spytek, I believe, said this on the after show, that when you play the Raiders, you want to feel like you've actually been through a war. I didn't say war, but been through a brutal football game the next day. And I think that's what they're going to be looking for in a lot of their players on both sides of the ball.
And it's so significant because, and I want to caution Raider Nation, because you have a vision. And I think Klint Kubiak started to really talk about that. We'll hear more over the months as the roster develops, as the draft develops, all of that. But at the end of the day, I think what's really encouraging about that is the fact that he's doing it, but at the same time, it will take time, right? You could see a team that doesn't have all the talent it needs. So as this team grows into 2026 and we see them hit the field, they can still execute those plays and just not have enough of the talent. And that, again, we saw last year. The Raiders didn't necessarily have all the talent, but they also didn't execute. There was a lot of messiness. And I think that that's what Raider fans would hope for. And that's what I hope to see as I watch the Raiders next year, that Klint Kubiak's whole mindset is there. Even if they come up short on plays and games, the style of play, the commitment to the scheme, and to, like you said, modern NFL thinking is there. And I think that'll be evident pretty clear as we roll into the regular season.
Yeah, you think about the lineage he's come from. A lot of you know his dad, Coach Gary Kubiak. A lot of Kubiak, Shanahan overlap there. Those teams don't commit a whole lot of boneheaded penalties. Those teams are usually well-run teams, prepared teams. They do their homework. You're not going to catch that team unprepared or just lacking in effort there. So I think those are the basics, of course. But when you build on to that, and he talked about this with our buddy Q Myers over at Raider Nation Radio, he talked about the blocking scheme, and he said, well, for your offensive linemen, you want some athletic guys, of course. But you also want to have a center. He specifically talked about the center position, about a guy who can pass protect well. So he has to be able to ID defenses. There's the football IQ, has to have the athleticism, and has to be able to pass protect. So there's your IQ and there's your physicality in that center position. Now, is that Jackson Powers Johnson? We'll find out. We'll see how it shakes out. But he talked about the offensive line during the press conference as well when asked about Ashton Jeanty, what he can do on the field. So it's clear that he identifies the offensive line as a position that needs some attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, he talked about the coaching staff, style of play. They asked him about, hey, are you going to call plays? And he kind of said, hey, I don't just call the plays. We all call the plays, the coaching staff. So I would imagine he's still going to be the main play caller. We've heard some names pop up, Mo, as far as offensive coordinator. Andrew Jonico, who's the current quarterbacks coach for the Seattle Seahawks, has come up as well. That wouldn't be a surprise. He's got 13 years of experience, worked with the Saints, the Bears, the Vikings in the previous. And then, of course, there's some other names out there as well. We'll also see here on the defensive side as these names pop up, and we'll talk about those over the next few shows. But I think that, again, as we talked about going back to the Antonio Pierce hire and then to the Pete Carroll hire, which is that coaching tree, where they've come from, the connections they have matter so much. And I think that's one of the key points here. Not only are you getting a good football coach who's proven in the modern NFL that he knows how to run an offense, but also he can tap into names and relationships that I think are going to help him build out what should be a pretty good staff here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and it goes back to, again, when he was assistant under his dad. He's been in Denver, he's been in Minnesota, he's been in New Orleans. The Raiders retained or didn't let go of Joe Woods, who has a history with Klint Kubiak. They were coaching together in Denver under his dad Gary. I believe Joe Woods then went on to be a defensive coordinator with the New Orleans Saints for 2 years. Klint Kubiak was there for one of those 2 years in 2024 before that staff was let go. So I would think that Joe Wood stays on, maybe not as a defensive coordinator, though I think he could be a candidate. But as you said, there are years and years of connections built over time that Klint Kubiak has had, either as an assistant himself or through his dad, that he can tap into to fill up the staff.
Yeah, we're going to, after the break, we're going to talk about the Maxx Crosby situation. But Mo, before we close this out, talking about Kubiak taking this role, I want to talk about Tom Brady, because there's still a lot of people, Raider Nation, that aren't necessarily comfortable with Tom Brady. A lot of criticism from last year, whether that's deserved or not, we don't know the whole inside story, but certainly as a minority owner now, given the official capacity of helping John Spytek run the football side, clearly he needs to be under more scrutiny now moving forward because he's taking active part. But during the press conference, Kubiak was very specific and talked about how Tom Brady played a big part in him wanting to take the Raiders' job. And I think that's what going back to when we found out and it was approved that Tom Brady was going to become a minority owner. You and I talked about that a lot, about, hey, that name, that opens doors that the Raider organization might not have been able to open in previous years. Now, Spytek, Brady, obviously close as well. So it seems like that's finally paying some dividends for Raider Nation, for the Raider organization.
Yeah, absolutely. He also said that, Tom Brady gave him his phone number, so he's going to be blowing up his phone as much as he can. So there's no secret there that, Klint Kubiak is going to be tapping into Tom Brady's mind and brain to see, how he can, one, probably build his football team, insight into certain players and player styles and things that he's seen. So there is that resource there, and it's good to have that resource. I'm not saying Tom Brady is this great, team builder, organizational builder, but it's good to have that resource there for you at, the pickup of a cell phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why, Mo, they didn't send us his phone number. I mean, I don't know what happened, but anyway. All right, we're going to step aside and take our break, our only break of the show. When we come back, we're talking a little about the Maxx Crosby situation, other odds and ends happening in Raider Nation. This is Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Moe Moton, Scott Gulbransen back with you, talking about all the changes in the Raider organization. Of course, spent the whole first segment on the Klint Kubiak. We'll talk more about that with the staff developing over the next few weeks. I would imagine he'll put that together pretty quickly, so we'll have a lot of updates, I'm sure, for you next week. But Mo, the other elephant in the room, or the number 98 in the room, if you will, is all that we've heard about Maxx Crosby. We heard, of course, Jay Glazer saying Maxx Crosby doesn't want anything to do with the Raiders. He's asked out. We heard Maxx Crosby do a couple interviews where he didn't exactly say that. He actually didn't deny it. He just said a lot of people during Super Bowl week were speaking for him, and he wasn't telling people to speak for him. When you look at this situation, we talked about it after the shutdown with the knee injury and Maxx Crosby walking out of the building and not being happy with how it ended for him, later finding out that the knee, in his own words, actually he knew he needed surgery earlier in the season, up in October, and continued to play on. And the Raiders shut him down, I think, for his own benefit. But when you look at this situation, I think this could go either direction. But what's your take on this? What do you think about Maxx Crosby? Now, a lot of Raider Nation, they want Maxx Crosby to stay. We heard a lot of the players, including Rich Gannon, talk about it yesterday, and even Klint Kubiak saying he sat down and had coffee that morning with Maxx Crosby, who was not at the press conference but was in the building. This is one of those things in the modern NFL with players and their own brands and vehicles, podcasts. They're out doing all sorts of things. It's hard to make sense of this, but tell me your feelings on where this Maxx Crosby situation is and where it goes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to put this in a nice, neat box. I don't take up the whole segment because there's a lot here, Scott. So first of all, Maxx Crosby had a trim of the meniscus. He had a full repair of the meniscus over a trim, and I think that's important to note because a repair requires more recovery time than a simple trim, and that could hold up a timetable for a potential trade. It also lets you know that maybe Maxx Crosby or the team did right by Maxx Crosby by shutting him down. We all know Maxx Crosby's going to play if he can get out in the field. But you're in a losing season. At the time, you had only 2 wins. What were you going to accomplish, right? So you shut him down. You get him an early start to have his repair instead of a trim, which takes a longer recovery period, so that he's back. At this rate, I believe he said he was going to be back in June on his podcast. So it's a long recovery time. The other thing to note here is, right, and this is just optics. I'm going to piss some people off who love Maxx Crosby, but being in the building and not at the press conference, to me, there's something there. That's not a coincidence. We've been through a lot of these press conferences for new coaches, Scott. How many times do we see Maxx Crosby front and center? How many times do we see these coaches speak and they speak directly to Maxx Crosby because he's in the room? Now, I know Klint Kubiak said he had coffee with Maxx Crosby. But you mean to tell me if Maxx Crosby's in the room, he couldn't attend that press conference? It wasn't that long. It wasn't like it took 2 hours of his time. Ashton Genty was there. A couple other players. I think Caleb Rogers was also there. Maxx Crosby likes to speak about himself as a leader on that football team, right? As a leader. So wouldn't you want a leader to be attending the press conference, actually there present while the new head coach is being introduced? I'm not saying this is an indication that he wants out, but I think it's fair to say that he is still a little pissed off, so to say, about being shut down. And I think that decision came from up top, John Spytek, who was leading that press conference. And again, this sounds like I'm connecting dots here and there, but I don't think it's all a coincidence that he's been front and center through these press conferences, and all of a sudden he was behind the scenes or not even there at this one, and he had coffee privately with Klint Kubiak. I think that matters. That I'm with you, Scott. I think this is a fluid situation. I'm not saying Maxx Crosby wants out. I'm not saying he's going to be a Raider for the rest of his career. But I will say I think there needs to be a conversation or discussion had with Maxx Crosby, Klint Kubiak, and John Spytek before anything is decided on the situation.
No, and I agree with you. I think it was a statement. I do. I think it was a statement by not being there. And yeah, he had coffee. That was Klint Kubiak, I think, doing well by Maxx Crosby to say, hey, because he knew he wasn't there. And if Maxx Crosby wants out, I would certainly understand it from one point of view. We've talked about that many times here on Silver and Black today, which is, hey, he's been through a lot there. He might be tired of that organization, and maybe he is. Now, that could change. Maxx Crosby might feel that way right now. And again, we're all assuming, we don't know for sure. But if he is that way, if he's kind of on feeling he doesn't want to be there, or he's thinking he might not want to be there, there's time, right? So there's time, like you said, he's got this injury. It's going to take a lot longer than if it was just a repair. So he's got time. So when the coaching staff is named, he's going to find out whose defensive staff is. That person undoubtedly will talk to Maxx Crosby, and maybe Maxx Crosby comes around. Maybe he doesn't. But I think that clearly, as you mentioned and picked up on, by not being there, he has been called by the ownership the face of the franchise. So when you have the biggest day in the franchise for this year, at least, naming your new head coach, and the face of the franchise is not there, huge, huge, huge signal to me that things are not well. Doesn't mean they can't be rectified, but I think it could go either way. And frankly, I understand Maxx Crosby, the competitiveness, the desire to play, even though he was injured, and being upset that they shut him down. But as I mentioned to you before, my friend, is the fact that he's also an asset of the Las Vegas Raiders. They are paying him. Them shutting him down, not only did it probably help him, but it was significant for them too. Because remember, he gets that surgery done. If they are to move him, because he is an asset, that's the business side of things. He's an asset. They want him to be as healthy as possible by the time you get post-draft, and they think about trading him if they're going to do that, because they have time to trade him. It's not like it has to happen now between now and the draft. So you look at that situation, and the Raiders were doing what they needed to do to protect themselves, no matter what, whether Maxx comes back and he's all healthy, or whether or not they want to look to trade him.
And I want to make something perfectly clear. I'm not trying to make Maxx Crosby out to be the bad guy here.
No.
But what I am saying is that I don't think it's a coincidence that he wasn't at this press conference, and people will say, well, maybe he didn't want it to be about him. Listen here. They were going to ask Maxx Crosby questions whether he was there or not, because we all know that was one of the biggest questions coming into this press conference. Did you talk to Max? What is your stance with Maxx Crosby? That was going to be asked, whether Crosby was sitting front and center right in front of Kubiak or in Mexico somewhere. And I'm using it as a random location. But regardless, they were going to ask. So I don't want to hear, oh, he didn't want the spotlight on him. It was going to be on him because we've been talking about this for weeks now. Where's Maxx Crosby going to go if he's traded? Does he want to be traded? All of these reports coming out. What did Jay Glazer say? What did Jason Lockenfor say? All of that was out there already. But and I just want to point out really quick, Scott, when Myles Garrett requested a trade, I believe last offseason, Maxx Crosby was on his podcast, I believe, to say he understands Myles Garrett's situation where he's on a team that's not doing a lot of winning. He understands he's getting up there in age, and he wants to win. And either you kind of threaten to leave, or you say, hey, you guys need to have a plan to convince me to stay here. If I'm going to put my blood, sweat, and tears into this, you got to show me a plan where we're going to start winning. And that goes to our point, Scott, because we fully agree on this one, that we don't think Maxx Crosby is necessarily out the door or all in yet. I think the discussion has to be had with John Spytek, with Klint Kubiak, and then Maxx Crosby has to make a decision. Am I all in or not? And if he's not all in, then John Spytek needs to go out there and take the best offer available. You don't want a disgruntled leader in the locker room. If he is all in, all good. I would love to have Maxx Crosby back for another year with this Raider team with Fernando Mendoza and Klint Kubiak.
But you know what else, Mo? You mentioned Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett said exactly what you said he said. Then they gave him the bag, and guess what? He was okay being in Cleveland. So, and that could change Maxx Crosby's mind too, by the way. Let's not forget, no matter how much you love people, players, whatever, people look out for their own self-interests, okay? And so if he looks to that and says, okay, I can like the staff, and then the Raiders, maybe he's angling for that. We don't know. Yeah, he got his deal, but that deal now looks old compared to what other people in the league are making. So it could be very easily, hey, Max, we want you to stay. Well, I'm unsure. And it's Max, look, we want you to stay. We want to commit to you. Here's the staff. Here's what's going on. Oh, and by the way, you want to talk about a contract renegotiation. Boom. Suddenly things change quickly. So I think it's going to be a fluid situation. I think it could go either way, and either way could be very good for the Raiders. And I know it's hard for fans to hear that, hey, Maxx Crosby leaving the Raiders would be good for the Raiders. It depends on the compensation and what happens. But certainly I think all of us who love watching him play would love to see him in the silver and black as well. I want to play one other clip. This was Rich Gannon from my former friends, the website that I founded that now Mike runs over at Vegas Sports Today, talking about Mendoza Kubiak. And then I want to talk a little bit about, before we wrap up the show, in what fans might expect with that quarterback and with that coach. Here is Rich Gannon.
I'm excited for Klint and his family. Obviously, I've known his father, Gary, a long time. I got a chance to watch Klint everywhere he's been, and of course, cover him really closely with the Seahawks this year. I just mentioned to him, I just thought the way he managed games this year in Seattle, the way he managed the quarterback situation, the running game, just his ability to shift gears in game is so impressive. And I just think, it's not just the X's and O's. I think it's the man. It's the character, it's the integrity, it's the toughness that Klint brings to the organization. I think Raider fans are real excited to get started with Klint Kubiak.
Sam Darnold always had talent, and he got the best out of that talent. Sometimes turnovers were his issue, coming out of USC, and he didn't turn the ball over once during the playoffs. What do you think it was about Klint's play calling that allowed him to flourish?
I think what's really important, you mentioned Sam Darnold. I think it's having somebody like a Mike McDonald or a Klint Kubiak that believes in you, that's going to put their arm around you, that's going to build you up, kind of like John Gruden and Al Davis did for me here with the Raiders. It's so important to have somebody that believes in you. And I think Klint, got the best out of Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold's a much different player than we saw when he was with the Jets and the Panthers. And I just think, I think it says a lot about Clint's ability to not just all be about the X's and O's. I'm going to build an offensive plan around what he does well, what he's comfortable doing, what he's got a history of doing. I think that's a genius of Klint Kubiak.
And lastly, got to get your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza, Rich. How do you evaluate him as a prospect at the position?
I still think it's early in the process. I mean, there's a lot to like there when you look at his body of work. I think he's got a lot of the qualities and intangibles you love with that position: toughness and accuracy and competitiveness, leadership skills. So I think it's just sorting through all the tape, just like these guys are going to do, and really just try and figure out who's the best player for the Raiders in 2026.
All right, not a massive endorsement there from Rich on Mendoza at the end, which I think is fair. I think what he says is fair. But the parts about Kubiak, and the reason I played this clip too a little bit, Mo, was a lot of discussion online amongst fans and others about Klint Kubiak, about Fernando Mendoza. Derek Carr intimated he might be willing to come out of retirement. Of course, some in Raider Nation want to go backwards, back to the future all the time, wanting to go back to other players. I think that would be a bad move. Derek Carr comes back. He's still his rights are still owned by the Saints, by the way. But if you look at the situation, a lot of people feel like, well, you can't rush Mendoza along. But if Klint Kubiak gets him and Klint Kubiak determines and builds that offense around Fernando Mendoza, you may see him in year one, right? I mean, you don't want to rush him. We know the Tom Brady quotes. We've talked about that, you and I, here many times as well. But I think this situation is going to be fluid as well. Fernando Mendoza might come in. They're going to build the offense around him. If they see he can automatically do it, and Klint Kubiak believes he can start right away, he will. If not, they would hopefully have that insurance policy as a veteran backup to maybe bring him along slower. But what's your take on that, and where you might see, based on what we know about Klint Kubiak, where that might go?
Now, you pick a quarterback number 1 overall, you hope to see him in his rookie year at some point, right? You would hope, and unless the guy that you put out there immediately is absolutely dealing, he looks like an early MVP candidate. You want to see that number 1 overall pick play in his first year. That's just the way the NFL is right now. Tom Brady is a little more old school. I've listened to Tom Brady talk. He'd rather his young quarterback, sit until he's absolutely ready, or as close to ready as possible. But I would think that Klint Kubiak, being the offensive mind he is, the brilliant offensive mind he is, he'll have Fernando Mendoza ready to play in year one. And it wouldn't surprise me if Geno Smith is dealt before week 1 of the season, when it's clear that Fernando Mendoza is ready to go.
Yeah, and I think you don't want to rush a quarterback along, but who's to say, and I know it's a high bar, who's to say he doesn't win the job out of camp? I mean, it could happen. Yeah. It might not happen, but it could happen, and that's going to be the coach's call, and we'll have to see how that all bears out. But man, it's going to be a crazy offseason. So many things going on. Mo, let everybody know what you got going this week inside Raider Nation so they can keep track.
Well, over at Bleacher Report, I did publish or release my 3 potential candidates for defensive coordinator under Klint Kubiak. I have 3 names in mind. I mentioned one of them today, and Joe Woods, who is still on the staff. There are 2 others out there. One, there's a rumor attached to him that there's some mutual interest. I would look into that. Over at Bleacher Report, I'm going to have some more on maybe Maxx Crosby, because I think we did a segment on it, but I think people are going to hear it as, oh, Mo hates Maxx Crosby. Mo thinks Maxx Crosby is a baby. I think he's being a bit passive aggressive, but again, I think there is something to be said that this is a fluid situation with him and Spytek and Kubiak.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Silver and Black today. Do me a favor, make sure you follow Mo on X. He's back. If you're blocked, just let him know somehow, right? I know you're still working through all that, right, man?
Right. So whoever hacked my account blocked all the people that I interacted with the most, including Scott. So I had to go through the list one by one and unblock people. There are some people that I legitimately blocked before I was hacked, so I don't want to unblock someone that I really blocked. So if I did block you in January, if you were blocked by my account in January, let me know. I will unblock you. If you were blocked before January, you will remain blocked.
Yes. Just you know what you could do is just respond to SNB today and tag Mo in it so that he knows, because he might not see it if you're blocked, but he could see it through the SNB today account. So we'll get that through. But yeah, it's crazy. Well, at least you're working through it, man. I mean, how do you know which ones you do? I mean, there's some memorable assholes out there, just I'll say it that way. So you remember those people that you blocked them, but there's some you might not remember, right? Because it gets crazy. So if you feel like you were blocked by the hacker, let Moe know, and then he can check his list and make sure you're not one of the a-holes.
Yeah, really quick, Scott. There are a lot of people that actually were hacked as well, so they have new accounts. And if I may have not recognized the new account. So if you have a new account, chances are I may not remember you. So please tag me in the Silver Black Today Twitter handle, and I'll unblock you.
All right, there you go. All right, we're up to speed. Moe, my friend, I'll see you next time.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right, for Moe Moton, for our producer, Mike Robier, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black Today. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Take care, Raider Nation.